r/ask Reddit. What is a dying tradition you believe should be preserved? Whenever I travel, I love to send postcards to my young family members. Sometimes I go to an antique store and find vintage postcards from the area I'm visiting. I've gotten positive feedback. They all seem to think it's neat to get them. But recently I received one from a young family member and it was a nice surprise. I have the habit of preserving mailed letters. I have my grandpa's letters. He is no more. I have my dad's foreign tour postcards that he posted when he was away for long. I have some cousins who send greetings, tiny gifts along with a handwritten letter. It says they took the effort for me. If you love sending postcards, Postcrossing is a great community. You can send postcards to people all around the world and receive them from other community members. Harvest festivals. It really only works in small to medium agricultural towns, but it really grounds one to the seasons and agricultural production. Right now in Lodi, California, we are having the annual Lodi Grape Festival, themed after the winter grape harvest season, and it's been going for something like 60 years. All I can think of is Parks and Rec. By Lil Sebastian. Trick or treating. It seems like a lot of families today are opting for the convenience of trunk or treating, where everybody gets their cars and park in a cul-de-sac and hand out candy from their trunks. I've heard people call it safer, but honestly, walking around and seeing everyone's house decorations and costumes was the fun part, not just getting the candy. I think it's kind of sad that a lot of kids are missing out on the experience equals. This is disappointing. I took my daughter for the first time last year and she absolutely loved it. To her it was so magical. I would never want this to stop. I bring out a fire pit, awning, and cooler with drinks for parents. I love socializing with my neighborhood and enjoying the excitement for the kids. Rain or moonlight, I'm out there. Local split screen multiplayer on consoles. We all used to play 4-player split screen on a 22-inch 480p. Now the screen is 4 times the size, we got 10 times the pixels, but no games to split on. WTF. Not to mention the consoles are many times as powerful as previous ones. Competitive board games with family. It's a nice time to spend with them. Nothing like stabbing your brother over Monopoly. We've all done it. Rip only childs. Castles. No one builds a good castle anymore. I mean, sure, there are castle-like buildings, but not a good 11-foot thick wall of stone castle. This has always been on my if I was insanely wealthy list. I would build an honest to god castle in the same style as they did in the 12th century. I know a couple who did this. They retired and built Glacier Castle in Indiana. They are huge history buffs, so they made the architecture very accurate to a certain time period, even though it meant limiting which structures' architectural trends they could incorporate. The idea was to make a bed and breakfast, but the place was so novel that they end up leasing it out for big events, like weddings and Ren fairs. It's not far from a wildcat preserve. RSVPing. Saying you'll be somewhere and actually showing up. Consistency, etc. I blame a lot of the rise of flakiness to cell phones. It's a lot easier to cancel last minute when you can reach someone who's already made it to your designated meeting place. Whereas before, everyone had a phone. If you made plans, you pretty much had to be there unless you had a good reason not to, or were a complete dong. I mean, I still think flaking is a dong move, but it's way easier to do it nowadays. This is almost my exact response. I always say how when I was a kid I would call my friend on his landline and plan to meet for ice cream in 20 minutes on my bike. If he wasn't there in 20 minutes, he was a dong. Been a while since we had a good gladiator match. I almost feel like death fights will happen again at some point in the future somewhere. MMA has been mainstream for a while and eventually someone will want to push the envelope with something more brutal like MMA did back in the day with boxing. I doubt it will be straight up death matches, but something crazier will definitely come around sooner or later. In my opinion, martial arts fights should be like the tournaments in Dragon Ball. There's only 3 rules: the fight finishes when a fighter is A, knocked out of bounds, B, knocked out for a certain amount of time, or C, they give up. No weapons or items, no killing. Other than that, go nuts, fight however and as brutally as you want using whatever techniques and fighting disciplines you want. No time limit, no refs stopping the fight due to an injury, and no illegal body shots, i.e. kidney punches. Sobremesa, that time at the end of a big dinner with friends and loved ones where you just sit around the table drinking wine and shooting the shit. Forget doing the dishes. Forget running off to go and do whatever. Just make some time to sit and spend time with people and enjoy some good dessert and a nice glass of whatever without getting drunk for the sake of it. My entire family does this except we brew a pot of coffee. It's like an unspoken thing after dinner that every has a cup of coffee and hangs out. I feel like every Hispanic family I know does this. I always hated it as a kid, but now it's nice to drink some good coffee and have a random conversation. Sitting on your porch. I love it. But I thought before, if everyone sits on their front porch, everyone would just be looking at everyone else sitting on their porch. Would there be a common knowledge that we don't start crossing streets and property lines to mingle? If I need to speak to Charlie across the street about carpooling, do I have to call him? Can I shout out? Or is it like invisible walls are up during porch sitting? Sitting on my porch right now, staring at my phone instead of watching the world go by. Bringing flowers on a first date. It's so cheesy, but no one has ever brought me flowers. I have, however, received countless dong pics. A lovely bucket of dongs. Edit. I can't spell, I mean bouquet, of course. There they are standing in a row. Drive-in movie theaters. We've got one about 15 minutes from me and it's the best. Like $6 to get in. And they don't kick you out if you want to stay for another show after the one you went to see. Since we're in FL, it's better to go during the winter when it's cooler and less bugs. Dress cozy. Bring some camping chairs. Whatever snacks and drinks you like. My friends with kids bring them and set them up with blankets and pillows in the back of the truck. It's a great time. My only complaint is that for horror movies or stuff like that where they're darker in color, it can be a little hard to see, but whatever. You can bring the whole squad for less than $20, so it's forgivable. Traditional animation. A lot of the big animation studios claim it's too expensive and time consuming, but if you look at their budgets and how long it can take to render CG animated films, then it's about the same difference. Edit. I mean hand-drawn versus any computer animation, not necessarily 2D versus 3D. Yep, I noticed when Disney shifted from traditional animation to CG. I really miss having traditionally animated films in the theater every year. Disney has tried to put out 2D animated films in recent years, but they just don't make nearly the amount that their 3D productions do. I think a big part of it is because, for a myriad of reasons, 2D has in recent years taken on a reputation for being a kiddie medium, whereas 3D is seen as being all ages, or at least having something for adults. Of course, that tends to have more to do with the writing than the aesthetic, but that won't stop people from having a bias. Canning and preserving food. I grew up doing this and it's something I still do. There's nothing like eating chili in the winter with tomato juice you made yourself or eating homemade strawberry jelly. My friends didn't grow up in that lifestyle but enjoy when I bring them fresh jelly in the spring. This is actually making a comeback. Not the Kardashians kind either. Lots of colleges and co-ops are offering classes in food preservation. And not just canning. My wife teaches a canning class. I teach an intro meat preservation class. Stores being closed on holidays. It's dead already, but was so much better. We treat retail workers like second-class citizens when we expect our stores to be open on holidays. Best part of working retail on holidays are when you're trying to close the store, which means that you have to stop people from coming into the store. Never had so many people tell me how you're ruining my Christmas by not letting me buy this thing at the last minute. Like, dude, we want to go home to our families too. Singing sea chanties. You'd enjoy my local pub. We have been known to burst into random sea chanties. We do a pretty good version of the Hobbit drinking medley too. Ooh of the year was 1778. That Irish one with the rings that indicate whether or not you're interested in dating anyone by the way you wear them. I think the current iteration is that girls who aren't interested in dating will put on a fake wedding band, and those without a ring are also not interested. It's not so much that they aren't interested in dating, but rather they are trying to repel creeps who will respect another man's property more than a woman's right to say no. Edit. Added quotes around property to hopefully clarify that women are not actually property, but rather they may be viewed in a similar manner. Stained glass window making in the style and quality of Louis Comfort Tiffany. A lot of traditional craftsmanship is being lost. Now you could probably draw something in Photoshop and 3D print it with colored plastics. Everything's too easy, and I think there's something about the actual handwork that goes into something you build. I am going to start learning how to make traditional stained glass so that I can spend my free time outside of work making it and slowly start selling it at street fairs. Bonfire night in the UK. Every year it's harder to find a bonfire, and Halloween is taking its place. Edit. It's been 3 days and I've been getting messages calling me a liar. I find that aggressive and quite hurtful. I am open to being wrong and merely responded based on my personal experience. Mate, where in the UK are you? In my borough London we had 4 different commons holding events on at least 2 nights. In our village, 100 people. We used to have this huge bonfire night event every year, almost like a mini festival with food stalls, little performances, fireworks, sparklers and all sorts. Just everyone gathered around having a good time with a duck-off huge bonfire in the center. Then one year the council said no, that's violating health codes, and it never happened again. Literally a 100-year-old ducking tradition. Not once was anyone even mildly injured. I'm still seething years down the line just thinking about it. Cheat codes in video games. Very few video games have them anymore. I think the last really big game I played that had cheat codes was Saints Row IV. Please bring them back. Edit. Thanks guys. My second most upvoted post on Reddit is me bitching about no cheat codes. Edit. A word edit. Rip my inbox edit. Holy shit, this is now my most upvoted Reddit post. Edit. Rip my inbox x2. They will never come back now that microtransactions are common practice. LAN parties. Me and my friends missed the days we'd bike to each other's houses just to play Halo 3 all night long, so we started having LAN parties again. It's so much fun. Handwritten letters. I'm not sad to see the greeting industry die. Duck $6 for a ducking card. And I say this as a former Hallmark employee, but I wish it was more common to send handwritten letters. They're treasured in a way you can never treasure an email. Having something handwritten is also such a meaningful connection, and keepsake if needed. I would do this if my handwriting wasn't actually just cuneiform. I love the fact that you just said cuneiform. I thought you literally meant dying tradition isn't something you do for the deceased, and I was going to say mummification, but then I saw the comments and realized I'd be dreadfully wrong. I think family dinners are dying in most American households. I know in most other countries people aren't so bent on work, so they make the time for regular family meals. I'm from an immigrant family, and most nights of the week we all sit down for dinner together, and realized from talking to some of my American friends most of them didn't do that regularly. I like your ideas better. I want a Viking funeral. Send me out the sea and light me on fire. Once I'm dead. Once I'm dead. Damn it. BJ Odiris run. Put down that torch. Fixed work weeks. I'm off on Wednesdays and Thursdays. I can plan things for those days. Every job I had before this would give me 2 days off every week, but I'd never know when they were going to be until the Sunday before. It's no way to live, and it doesn't make for happy employees. Edit to leave this for the people who don't understand how this happens. Physical texts, be it books or written letters, and games. My old high school just did away with physical textbooks. Most of the computers and printers. Every kid is given a Google Chromebook at the beginning of the year, and they do all their work on that. It is ducking weird to me. Those things would have been broken and stolen hardcore by my generation. I would hate not having enough screen real estate to have multiple windows open when doing homework. I'm fine with ebooks if it's a separate device, or I can put the window on one half of like a 24 inches monitor. But trying to do homework with an ebook on a small laptop would be horrible. If I'm doing math homework, I'd want to have the book, Slater, and probably Wolfram Alpha all open at once. Learning how to live off the land. All these survival foods you buy for hiking, camping, etc. might not always be available. I love watching Primitive Technology on YouTube because he shows how to live off the land without any modern tools. The only modern things in his videos are his shorts and the cameras recording the video. As much as I enjoy watching Primitive Technology, if something happens in society where we're back to building huts out of mud and rocks, I'm not sure if I wanna make it. LOL. That's what I think when there is talk about a zombie apocalypse. There's always people fighting tooth and nail to live. My brother is a big fan of a future zombie outbreak and got angry when I didn't get passionate about learning to survive. He asks, "What are you going to do when zombies happen?" I just said, "I'm going to die, comma." He's 36 BTW. I'm fairly sure that this is the 5th I'm answering this question with this, but I'm going to keep doing it until it comes back. 2 adults should be able to consent to AGUL to the death. I've definitely seen you post this 5 times this week. I know this because I upvoted it all 5 times. Can think of several. Native languages are dying off all over the world. Some organizations are trying to fight this by recording what they can. But we are still losing languages every day as the elders die. Neon signs are a dying art form. And thousands of signs stop working every year with no one to fix them, as fewer people know how to fix them. Gold leaf is another art form you hardly see anymore, except maybe on the latest food trend or fire trucks. Not sure if you heard about Brazil's National Museum burning earlier this month. https://www.cnn.com. The 2nd of September 2018, America's Brazil National Museum Fire Intel Index. HTML1 Article 1 read, I think maybe NY Times, said the museum housed some recordings of dead languages that are now lost because of the fire. The fire happened because Brazil's government kept cutting back on funding for the museum and the building wasn't maintained properly. It's really an unfortunate lesson to learn about the importance of our museums. Edit. I found the article one was thinking of. It's from The Atlantic and has more detail on what was lost. https://www.theatlantic.com Science Archive /2018/09 Brazil Rio de Janeiro Museum Fire /569,299. Home economics, as they used to call it, learning the basics of cooking, baking, sewing, cleaning and how to manage a household budget. They are useful and important things to know no matter who you are. Basic life skills would kill as a course in this day and age. Learn to cook from ingredients you won't feel bad for using. Learn how to fix things you own, like cars and some electronics. Learn how to balance a checkbook and budget. I think genuine thank you cards for big events, weddings, are important. If I'm about to spend $200 plus, it's nice to hear that your presence was appreciated. In a similar vein, RSVPing for big events. I had a former good friend ghost me for my wedding, if it can be called that. I sent the traditional RSVP for weddings, where you check yes I'm coming, no I can't. It was pretty straightforward. I heard nothing, so I sent her a Facebook message. Private. I was polite, saying I don't know if you got my invite, but I'd like to know if you're coming or not. It's okay if you aren't. I just need to know. No response. I try not to be petty, but I just think that's rude, especially if you are asked to give a response. I had another friend that RSVP'd but didn't bother to show up. Come to think of it, she did the same thing for my shower, according to my maid of honor. Thanksgiving nowadays people just consider it as the day before Black Friday. Fact, Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday. Food and football, what is better? And my parents host our whole family every year. 25-ish people. One of my aunts asked my dad to move dinner up so she can go get in line at some store. My dad laughed in her face and told her we are eating at this time, if you can't make it tough shit, more leftovers for us. She chose shopping over the family and is now not invited this year. Your dad is pretty cool and a major boss. Cocktails at noon. I'll drink a cocktail at your noon. My noon. Noon in East Asia. Noon on the moon. You pour it. I'll drink it. We can save this one, boys. Went to DC recently and holy crap, are there a lot of restaurants that do bottomless mimosas during for lunch. A lunchtime pint of beer in the UK. It's good for morale. There's a reason the Navy used to give all the men rum every day right up until the 70s. So many jobs would be improved if you could duck off to the pub and drink a pint or two for an hour at lunch. One job I worked kept this tradition alive and remains the best workplace I've ever worked at. When I started my job, our office building was next door to a pub. We went there most lunchtimes. Then, after a couple of years, my team was merged with another team in another county, and our new office was on an industrial estate. Our first week there, somebody asked the other team where the nearest pub was, and they reacted like we'd asked where we could go to torture some puppies. This is pretty niche, but I'm Sami. We're the indigenous people of northern Scandinavia, commonly called Lapland, but I strongly urge against that name. I'm a second generation American, but my cousins are a big part of the reindeer herding tradition within the Sami, which is a small subgroup even within our small group. We've been doing it for a really long time. I believe archaeological evidence dates back to 2,000-3,000 years ago. There are now about 6,500 Sami actively engaged in reindeer husbandry, and the number is dwindling. I don't know what the exact numbers were even 50-100 years ago, but I do know that the Swedish and Norwegian governments were, especially 50 years ago, steadily trying to incorporate us into mainstream culture. That includes outlawing a lot of things, like teaching children in our native language, singing traditional songs, and so on, to severely limiting the ability to herd reindeer. My grandmother, for example, was taken from her family at age 13 and forced into a state school and never allowed to speak her language or see her family. She later emigrated to America to seek something better. I don't know if she found it. Today, we're a protected group and one of the only ones that are allowed to do so. But we now fight against a lot of youth being disinterested and wanting a mainstream, urban life. And I'm no different, but I'm starting to feel weird about it now that I'm 32. And it's hard to not feel like our identity is being eroded and slipping away. Well-designed matchbooks at bars and hotels. Branded sugar packets too. Saying no to kids more often. This so much. Watched a friend of mine go through her entire refrigerator with her kid last night looking for something that he wanted for dinner. All because he didn't want to eat the pasta she had already made him. He's 3. It's her kid, so I stayed out of it. But will he mind? That would not be happening. Tell him no FFS. Enjoying things without having to show it off on social media. People used to do things for the sake of doing things. Now it's just for their Instagram aesthetic. People still did that. When you visited, they'd get out the vacation photos, film strips, or the worst one of all, the slideshow. Paying employees fairly for a fair day of work without expecting people to give up their family for a ducking paycheck. With modern tech, we should have been able to work less. Instead, all we've done is produce more without a proportional raise in wages. It's bullshit. Yelling Worldster when a fight breaks out. Since WS has stopped posting fights and now they just post unfunny videos or thoughts. Intervening in a fight to stop it, recording it and yelling Worldster. Punctuality. I was raised with a pretty strict dad and am now in the military. Showing up on time is a huge part of who I am. Early in my life it went from me getting compliments and tabloids to now people making snarky comments like, wow, you're here early, or we never have people who actually show up at the exact time. Systems work better. It demonstrates mutual respect. It builds discipline and consistency and just makes us better people. Sharing meals with friends, family. Not a dying one, but a dead one. Hats. When I was young, the mailman wore one. Police, fire, milkman. I know, really old. Nurses, even repair people wore hats. Business people wore fedoras. What I am getting at is, in those days with uniforms, people immediately garnered respect because of the uniform. There was a standard that came with a sharp, well-maintained look. These days, one can hardly tell who is your bus driver or neurosurgeon. It seems the more casual we have become, the less respect we have for each other, simply because we don't see people in those societal roles, implying order. That is not a conservative observation. I am actually very liberal. I just think better defined roles made for a more respectful society. Probably not going to fly, but there is my 2 cents. The 3.5mm headphone jack. cooking proper food from fresh, non-processed ingredients. Hear me out on this one. Avoiding work on Sunday, keeping the Sabbath day holy, regardless of your faith background, or lack thereof. I think everyone could appreciate having one day a week where you have no expectation to work, and could identify with the world outside of consumerism. I grew up Mormon, where there is still a strong cultural expectation to avoid work, spending money or making others work on Sundays. One of the things I miss most from Mormonism is the relaxation and respite that practice brought. Nowadays it feels like all of my weeks blend together without consequence. It's just so difficult to avoid doing anything on Sunday without the community pressure support. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.